And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Today we're talking about Cartoona. Now, if you look at the artwork on Cartoona, you'll see that it's very whimsical, fun cartoon putting together creatures. And what I like about this game, and what's interesting, is that you're putting together creatures. You have these giant tiles, and you're going to put them together to make monsters, but you don't have to necessarily... I've played games like this before where you have head, torso, feet. In this one, there's more than that. You can create all sorts of different shapes and monsters, and I'll show you that in a minute. In fact, why are we waiting for it? Let's look at it. Cartoona comes with a very large group of tiles, and these tiles all show different artwork on them, and each tile is a certain part of a creature. For example, here we have a nose, here we have ears, here we have the rear of an animal, here we have a head, and here we have the bottom of an animal, and you can see that different animals can go together different ways. For example, I can put this head on this animal so it already has all 4 feet. But if I didn't want to put that head on that animal, then I could find a larger torso area, for example. Then I have the front and the back, in which case I need 2 pairs of legs. Now the legs are coincidentally marked with B and F, so you know which ones are the back legs and which ones are the front legs. And you can have... the biggest animal that you can have is one that has a tail. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tiles. That's the largest. But you can also have smaller tiles, putting the ears on, putting the tail on. There's different ways that you can finish the animals and creatures. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the animals to be all of one color, if possible, and to finish animals. And there's even cards that are one animal completely. In fact, before we go any farther, let me show you a bunch of just the different possible combinations that there are. When you finish an animal, you're going to look at the points on each of the tiles, and you're going to add them up. So you can see here, this animal is worth 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 17 points. However, if you get an animal that's all of one color, so let's say, for example, we have a completely yellow animal here. At that point, we have 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15 points, but then we double it because it's all the same color, and then in that case you get 30 points, which is a huge amount for an animal. Some tiles are dual colored, and so you can go in different color animals. Now the way the game works, and we're going to talk about the main game, the strategy game. Players are going to be either on teams or by themselves, and they're going to get a handful of tiles, and on your turn you're going to play a tile down. And depending on how many players are playing, you can either have 1 animal over play or 2 animals in play. And so when you play a tile down, it has to attach to the previous one. This is front legs, so they can attach, and I can't do something like this, so I cannot play that tile. I have to play a tile that attaches to one that's already in play. This is legal, and then next turn I can play these, and I can play the tail, and so on and so forth. I can add the tiles down. And so players are going to take turns going back and forth, playing and drawing tiles. The game comes with a deck of cards, and you'll be drawing these cards and playing these. Like, for example, this one lets you play an extra tile. This one, if you complete a creature with a collar, udder, or a beak, you can play this card to score 4 points. You can play this on any tile you choose. You can draw 2 tiles. And so there's all sorts of cards, swap tiles, play this card to block any card played. Each opposing player must give you 1 tile, 1 card of their choice, and they play on any magenta tile plus 3 points. And so these cards can change the game up, and you can play with them or you don't have to play with them. The game is kind of open-ended, because what you're doing in the basic game is you're going to take turns as a team building 1 or 2 animals, or individually building 1 or 2 animals, and you draw tiles and then play a tile. And usually what you'll do on your turn is you'll draw 2 tiles and then add them to your hand, play a tile, adding it to your creature, and then discarding another tile. and then you can play a card if you choose. However, you can play a basic game, which is really good for kids, in which you don't really work with the cards at all. And then when you score a creature, you add it down, you write down the number of points, get rid of the creature, and start building another creature. And then, again, you can play a team. Or you can play a solitaire game where you're just trying to go through and build as many creatures as you can. Or even you can just let kids play with the game, and they can sit there and do a puzzle and go through and try to build different monsters made from these tiles. Cartoona is going to have a very wide appeal. In fact, in a week, I'm going to make a video showing my kids and all of them, and showing what they all think, from my smallest, my 3-year-old, all the way up to my oldest, who is now 12, and show all their reactions to what they thought of the game. But suffice it to say, this is a fantastic family game. People are going to like putting the tiles together. The cards add an element. You know, you can play the basic strategy game where you're sitting there trying to think, okay, I'm going to put down this torso to start with, because obviously there's more pieces that go off it, and I have a bunch of yellow tiles in my hand. Am I going to save those trying to make a completely one-color creature, or am I just going to start putting out tiles as fast as I can, scoring creatures and getting them off the board? The cards add more element. It adds a kind of take that to it. But I also like the fact that I can just give it to my little kids and they'll sit there and be like, oh, it's a puzzle. It's not a puzzle, but they think it is. They complete it and it's, wow, look what I've made. Look at the creatures. The artwork is a major plus here. I mean, this is very cool. It looks like, you know, those books that I used to read when I was a kid and read to my kids now. Very much like the artwork. And if you know, as you look at these tiles, if the artwork on these, if the googly eyes, if that appeals to you, then you're going to like this game. So there's a lot to say that's in favor of this game, that it's very much for the kids. It's very much for families, but even adults can play the game as they play the cards on each other and play a kind of a strategy game of building the monsters. So if you're interested in that, I'll have the Kickstarter link in just a second. You can go support it. And in a week, come back and I'll show you what my kids think of the game. But I can tell you right now, they love it.